Well, hey there, and welcome to another episode of My Counselor Live. My name is Matthew Thrower, and I will be your host for this My Counselor Live episode. I want to introduce you guys to our special guest and one of our counselors here at MyCounselor.Online, Lane Jordan. Lane, thanks so much for being on the show today. Would you introduce yourself to our audience and tell the viewers just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, Matthew, thank you for having me on today. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to be able to just talk about what we've got going on and about my article. But yeah, so a little bit about myself. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri right now, where I live here with my wife, and I practice here at the MyCounselor.Online office here in Kansas City. But I'm originally from North Carolina, but spent a lot of time in Southern Missouri, and absolutely love being able to work here at My Counselor and be able to help people who are struggling, but then also share the love of Christ all at the same time.
That's awesome, man. I love that. Lane, let's get into an article that you just recently wrote. It's called What It Takes for Accountability to Be Successful. Tell us a little bit about it. What inspired you to write this article?
Yeah, so what inspired me to write this article is a combination of factors. One is like my own personal experiences, and then two, just what I see like being a church member and being a counselor all at the same time. And there's a lot of people growing up, I knew that I needed accountability for a lot of things in my life. And I would get together with my friends and we'd say, guys, let's do this. And it never happened. There's problems that we were wanting accountability for, whether that was working out, eating right, reading our Bible more, or even things like pornography, never really changed because our accountability was not good. And then as I come in and I'm a church member now, there's again people that come to me that says do accountability, or I'm coaching people on accountability, and their lives never change because they don't have a good plan and the accountability partners aren't willing to stick with them. And then when I come into practice, the number one factor for a lot of things is being able to have the accountability to do the things that they need to do. And I can't be there for, I'm only there weekly most of the time, and they need other people to help. And so I've just seen the lack of a lot of understanding of what accountability means and entails. And I've done it myself too. And so I wanted to write this article to those that are seeking accountability, those who are accountable, and really to myself too, to remind myself, this is what good accountability looks like.
Yeah. So everyone needs to be held accountable. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, everybody needs to be accountable. So it's really, anybody should be able to read this and find something that's helpful.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. From pastors to church people, everyone. I agree with that. That's good. So tell us why. What's the why behind accountability?
Yeah. So the question is how deep and theological we want to be able to get this why of why we need accountability. Because I'm a Christian, I truly believe that we are made in the image of God, but we also have a sin nature as well. And that sin nature wants to do things that are not helpful to us or to those around us. And so there's certain things that come up in our lives that will keep us away from having a good relationship with God, good relationship with our wives, our spouses, our friends, and even like ourselves. And so there's lots of different factors, pretty much just sin, but those can be, like I said earlier, working out, eating right, taking care of yourself well, or even just having a harsh tongue, pornography, right? All of these different things we need accountable for, because it's not the way that God has designed us, and that pulls us further away from the Father, but also away from those that are around us. And God created us to live in connection with one another and in a relationship. So if we allow these things to continue our lives, it's going to further isolate us and compound the other things that come up in our lives that isolate us even more. It's kind of like an avalanche. Once we allow things to continue in our lives, it's just going to start to become a runaway freight train. And we need to be able to have people come in our lives and keep us accountable to working on those things and growing closer to each other and closer to God.
Yeah. So God has provided a solution for the sin issue. Jesus Christ, right? And he's also provided a solution for the struggle, and that's the church. You know,
Mhm.
he always has an answer, it seems, for what our culture is going through. It's just, can we really, lock into that, right?
Exactly.
Um, yeah, in your article, you mentioned 4 tips for seeking accountability.
Mhm.
Explain each of these, because I thought these were pretty good, even for myself reading them. So yeah.
Yeah. So those 4 tips are: be brave, be deliberate, be honest, and be specific, right?
Hmm.
So when we need accountability, we have to be brave. I truly believe it takes more courage to look at somebody that you deeply care about and looking them in the eyes and saying, I have this problem.
Hmm.
I think that takes an extreme amount of courage, because there's a lot of, I think culture has done a disservice to us saying there's shame about being weak. And
Hmm.
so that stops a lot of people from seeking accountability, because they have this unrealistic expectation upon themselves saying, I can't be weak.
Yeah.
It's actually more brave and courageous to be able to step into those situations and saying, I have these things going on in my life and I need help. So be brave.
Yeah, that's good. Takes courage to talk about where you are in life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Takes courage and vulnerability. And that goes in.
Hmm.
The second one is be deliberate. So we can all look at ourselves and see things that need to change, but those that are truly going to change are the ones that takes action after
Hmm.
them. Growing up, I had a pretty messy room, and I'm like, I need to clean this, but that would go on for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks until my mom would come in to say, hey, you need to do this. When we feel the pull, the kick in our spirit to knowing that this is a place of our lives where we need to grow, we have to be deliberate in saying, I need to take care of this and it can't wait till tomorrow.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So takes courage, be deliberate.
Mhm. Be
What
honest.
about the honest? Yeah.
Yeah. Like we said earlier, it takes bravery to be honest up front.
Hmm.
Where this third point, be honest, really comes into play once we're already in accountability, because we can take that initial step of saying, okay, I need help, but then those people aren't with us 100% of the time, especially when we're looking for accountability on pornography or eating right, or other things like that. We can cheat and no one would ever know, or we can be struggling with these other things and no one would ever know. It takes more honesty for us to be able to say, this is where I'm at, this is where I'm struggling. I mean, we really see a good example of what honesty looks like in Mark 14 with Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, where we know he's going to go to the cross, but he really does not want to. And he's really honest with God, saying, hey, this is where I'm at.
Hmm.
And he's not shamed, he's welcomed for it. And then we see him in a couple chapters later end up dying on the cross for our sins. And so to me, that's an encouragement to be able to see that even when we are struggling with the thing that we want to accomplish, we have to be honest with where we're at for it to be successful, because that allows our accountability partners to come in and give us grace and give us the help that we need when we're honest.
Yeah, that's good. So how about being specific about where we are,
Yeah.
what we're going through?
Yeah, being specific where we're at and where we are, but also where we want to go.
Hmm.
Because I really like what Stephen Covey and a lot of other business leaders talk about with SMART goals, right? Specific,
Hmm.
measurable, attainable, relatable, and time bound. I would encourage people to have a SMART goal when you're going into accountability, because there's been times in my own life when I said, oh, I want to be accountable, I want to do this. And I got marked off so much in college for putting this because it's so vague. And so we want to be able to be really specific with what we're accomplishing. What does it look like when we have accomplished it? And how long are we trying to get there? Right? When a good example is when we're working out. We want to work out. Okay. Do you want to lose weight? Do you want to build muscle? Do you want to lean out? How are we going to accomplish that? By doing low rep, high rep, whatever.
Mhm.
And how long are we going to do that? How often a week are we going to do that? How long? We need to have action steps to how we're going to accomplish this goal, because it's specific. We know when we're on track or off track, and it allows our accountability partners to know when to keep us accountable too, when they have a roadmap as well.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So tell us a little bit about some advice that you would give to someone who was asked to be an accountability partner. I was reminded of Romans 12 when I saw this question. It says, "Let love be genuine,
Mm-hmm.
hate what is evil, hold fast to what is good, love one another with brotherly affection, outdo one another in showing honor." I thought,
Mm-hmm.
what a model that we have for those
Yeah.
of us who are trying to be the accountability partner. But take us a little bit deeper into it. What advice would you give someone?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love Romans. And I also
Mhm.
love what later said in the New Testament is we are supposed to love each other in grace and truth. And
Mhm.
being an accountability partner is hard. I think there's days where it's a harder task to be the accountability partner than it is the accountable,
Mhm.
because there's a really fine line and tension with that grace and truth. And we have a huge person to model after, like Jesus Christ. He's the one who did it the best. And so, like, no
Right.
pressure, right? And so my advice to those who are accountability partners is be ready to work hard, and be ready to commit, because this person's really struggling and they need your help. They're really looking to you to help them. And there can be this faulty expectation when we are accountability partners that they're going to do all the work, right? We just have to sit here and congratulate them and say, "Good job, you did it." That's often, most of the time, not the case.
Yeah.
We need to be willing to really work in the trenches with these people that we're keeping accountable, reach out to them, go after them, because there's so much shame oftentimes that even after reaching out for accountability, that they're not ready to um, reach out to you when they're struggling. So you have to be
Mhm.
responsible to go out to them. And so I think Henry Cloud's coined this phrase, unmerited grace. Really, we see that in the Bible. It's what we receive every single day from Christ himself for our sins. We have to be able to take the stance of unmerited grace to those that we are keeping accountable.
Yeah. That's good. And I think it also takes that person who's being the accountability partner to be very intentional with their work
Mm-hmm.
with people. Because I know I've often seen that as a pastor. Like, I've seen the accountability partners just kind of, sit in the back seat and like, well, I'm waiting on them, you
Mm-hmm.
know. No, don't just wait on them, because you never know what they're going through. It's like in the dark night, like what are they doing? You got to be really intentional about it. So talk to us a little bit about the person who is seeking accountability. What's some advice you would give them?
Yeah.
Like, maybe tell us a little bit about some of the type of the people that they need to seek out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my first piece, I think, before advice is just encouragement.
Mhm.
This is normal. Anybody that doesn't need accountability is lying to themselves. This is normal. It's not immature to seek help. It actually shows maturity and a desire to grow. Advice on when we're seeking accountability: really look to those that are around you, those that you're closest to, and then really pick out the people that you admire the most,
Mhm.
of accomplishing the thing that you've done, that you want to accomplish. If you want to work out more, find the guy that you're like, okay, I respect your discipline. I respect the things that you do. Can you help me? When we're seeking accountability for pornography or things like that, seek those that have purity right now. And so, because that allows you to have someone who's wiser in the areas that you are weaker in, to pour into you and help you avoid the potential pitfalls that you're not likely to see, and help you really understand what it's like to function in this area of your life that you haven't been functioning before.
Yeah, that's good. So you mentioned this in your article. Should it be the same sex, or should it
Yeah,
be somebody different? And what does that look like?
yeah. There'd be some people that disagree with me, but I always tend to be, especially with these deeper matters, of spirituality. And like I said earlier, I've been saying pornography a lot because that's the thing that men especially, and women too, need accountability for. It really needs to be the same sex. It really does. The reason for that is because these are very vulnerable and emotional things. And when we open up our hearts to like that, it can create a lot of emotions that we don't understand. And people's help and accountability can be mistaken for something different when they're really just trying to help. And it causes conflict. It causes us to take a few steps back, and even harms the relationship that was. And so things are never the same again. So really, we need God's created accountability, same-sex accountability. We see that, and again, the Garden of Gethsemane, he's there with his brothers. He's there with his brothers in this time of need. And so, yeah, there can be this misconception of what, like, oh, well, you're married, do you have same-sex relationships? I mean, yeah, God's created marriage to be a reflection of accountability, right? I think my wife is one of my greatest accountability partners. But when we're diving into the deep things, he's created the church to be able to provide those men and those women around us to help us in those times of need.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's good. So one other question about this. Speak to the moms, the dads, or spouses who have been trying to get their son or their daughter or their wife or their husband to get accountability, but they just don't want to do it. What's some kind of encouragement or maybe some advice you can give them?
Yeah. This is harder for me because I don't have kids, but I remember what my dad did for me. What he did for me is he would be very blunt with the places that I was not doing well. However, and he told me this weekend when I saw him, that I will always be honest with you when you ask me to be honest, right? You have to be able to make your own decisions and know when you need help. I will be ready and willing to help you whenever you need it. However, it is your responsibility to take responsibility for your actions and ownership for that. We can, as those that are living in community, we can always point out what's going wrong and hard. However, that tends to breed a lot of shame. We need to be able to create this space where people feel received, loved, and cared for. And that will bring the opportunities for them to say, hey, I'm really struggling here. I feel safe enough to share this with you. When we don't condemn them, they feel that safety, and we're able to come alongside them, opposed to saying someone that's like, you've done everything wrong your entire life and you'll never do everything ever again. They'll never want to seek accountability because they're afraid that they might fail.
Yeah. So it sounds like if you're constantly nagging them, chances are they're probably not going to go get help.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
It just goes back to that scripture that I mentioned, just that gentle love, the grace plus the truth, because they have to be intertwined with each other. Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah. And that starts from day one, right? It starts from very young. We see this in so many research studies growing up, that the people who are successful, that have a good attachment, they receive it from day one. They know that their mom and dad loves them regardlessly of what happens, just the way that we feel the love from the Father every single day, regardlessly of what we do.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I want to encourage everyone to check out the article because it's very good and very needed for our culture today. So thank you, Lane, for writing that. We love doing trending topics, current events here. It's one of my favorite things to do when I'm hosting the show. So today we get to talk about a trending topic, and we're going to talk about pre-wedding anxiety. All right. What is pre-wedding anxiety?
Yeah. So pre-wedding anxiety is like nervousness, anxiousness, fear even about the wedding before it happens. And this can show up in a variety of ways. It's really common, it's really normal. But like if you're not getting enough sleep, if you're irritable, more angry, quick to be set off, that's a good indicator that you have some pre-wedding anxiety. If you just can't stop thinking about the wedding, that's another sign as well. Yeah, so anything nervous about the wedding, just wondering if the day is ever going to get there, that's pre-wedding anxiety.
Yeah. So what's some of the causes? What causes couples to experience this anxiety?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the night before the wedding or maybe a week before.
Yeah. And so I know for me, like I was nervous about my wedding for sure. And like the factors with that is that you're already running a full life at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us will have jobs and other things. Like we barely have time to even like date at this point. And now we've successfully achieved that. And now we want to add a wedding to it. So that adds basically another part-time job onto the stress that we're already working with. And so it really dumps out the cup of like our emotional capacity that's already pretty low, and it just adds more to it. And so a lot of causes to pre-wedding anxiety is that it's something that none of us have ever done before, most of us, and have never planned a wedding before. So there's so many new realms of just the elements of going on there. There's the family dynamics that come in, because family's hard. Then you're dealing with somebody else's family. And so trying to make sure everyone's happy as much as they can be, continuing to maintain our relationship and everything else that we have to do. And then there's this whole factor that my life is going to change upon this day. And that's a really big deal. So if you weren't nervous and didn't have any anxiety about it, I think this shows that you're not thinking deeply enough about it.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head right there, especially with family. I think I've officiated, I don't know, a ton of weddings, and the family dynamics is always, it seems like it's always the biggest stress dealing, and it's insane. And one of the anxieties I know that's out there too is some of the negative voices that are out there. You're too young, or you don't have enough money. I think if we're trying to always measure ourselves by other people's standards, then surely that's going to cause anxiety too, right?
Yeah. I remember my family is from rural Missouri. And so there's always this joke that I never felt like a joke, that like, man, marriage is the ball and chain, man. Like you better be ready. And I took that with a grain of salt, but I'm like, I hope it's not like this. I really like my wife, Krista. And then a year into marriage, it was just like, man, this is false. Like the expectation reality of what marriage was much different than what other would have told me, right? Every marriage is different. It's up to you to make sure that you're doing the things that you need to do to make sure that your marriage is successful.
Yeah. So what's some advice you'd give somebody who's experiencing pre-wedding anxiety?
Yeah. So advice to those that are experiencing pre-wedding anxiety: set aside time to still date with your partner, right? Still have times to where you guys are being a normal couple the way that you guys were before. Set rules about no wedding talk. Just enjoy each other's company, and remember why you're about to ready to make this commitment and why the wedding is about to happen. Secondly, talk about the anxiety. Be open and honest with it. It's okay. When people if we don't share about the anxiety that we're feeling and experiencing, it does not allow those that are around us to come in and help, because there may be things that other people can help with, and they don't know unless we talk about it. And they can't give us the wisdom that might be needed in those moments. And then even with our spouse, with our partner, it's important to talk about the anxiety with them, saying, hey, this is where I'm at. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Third is delegate, man. If you can delegate, if it's not important and you can delegate it to somebody else, delegate it. and that's okay. And so, but the last one, I think this is the most important one, is to make sure that you have good self-care, continuing the routines that you have of like spending time with the father, or even working out, and just enjoying life, the things that we do to take care of ourselves on a normal basis, continue those, even enhance those, because when more stress comes in, we need those even more in our lives. And that's the same with the wedding as well.
Yeah. And I think there are also preventative measures that you can take. If I'm going to officiate a wedding, I don't do that unless we've gone through marriage counseling, go through some workbooks. And I know that can really alleviate a lot of, or eliminate a lot of those stresses and anxieties. So that would also be my advice in that too.
I really like what you say about premarital counseling there. I think it's important, like what I've seen a lot, not only as someone who's officiated weddings, but then also as a counselor that does premarital counseling, is that it is always better to get your premarital counseling done early. And then that allows me space as the counselor to be able to help you guys regulate some of this anxiety that comes up with the wedding as it comes before. If we're trying to cram everything into, like, I've done it in 6 weeks before, and that's pretty quick. That's not enough time. And then if we're able to like get it done beforehand, when other things come up, we have the tools in place already to be able to work through that, as we already have that foundation established.
Yeah. And it won't eliminate every single stress, but I think what it allows is you to be able to set the expectations and, create those boundaries, and it really works a lot of things out. So it's a good plug here to get into counseling, pre-marriage counseling. So that's good stuff, man. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah. So the last one is, again, the premarital plug. Is there was a research study done by Doctors Les and Leslie Parrott, and they saw that every couple that did premarital counseling had about a 31 to 33% marriage satisfaction increase compared to those that did not seek it. Wow. And that's a big chunk.
Yeah.
So I think it's super encouraging to be able to do premarital counseling because it helps a lot.
Yeah, that's good. I'm going to write that down so I could tell all my people that. That's good. All right, we're going to get into some questions that our viewers have submitted. And we love answering questions here. Again, I love listening to these questions and hearing you guys answer them. And I just want to say thank you so much for submitting your questions. And I want to encourage anyone who's watching or listening right now, you could submit your questions to MyCounselor.Online/ask. So we can ask and answer questions in future episodes. So let's get into it. We've got a couple questions that we're going to read here. I'm going to read the first one. It says this: my husband is cheating on me through pornography and online chats with other women. I have confronted him about it, but he says that it's an addiction for him and he can't stop. What should I do?
Wow. Yeah, this one really hurts my heart to hear. Right. To whoever this viewer is that wrote this, like, my heart breaks for you. And I can feel it right now. Like, I feel a lot of sadness for you in your situation. And it's not okay. It's not okay. And it's perfectly normal to not know where to go. And so my encouragement for you is to, one, seek out counseling. I think it's extremely important. If he won't come with you, go yourself, because there's so much other things that you're experiencing, so much grief, pain, sadness, that's really hard to work through on your own. And then with him, I would encourage him, if you can, to have him go to a sexual addiction recovery group, whether that is at your church, whether that is Celebrate Your Recovery, or an SAA group. Addictions happen every single day. And that doesn't mean we can't change. God's given us the ability to change and grow closer to him again. And so seek out those steps. But then there's also the real factor that he may say no. And then that is up to you to be able to understand what you need to keep you safe and keep you healthy as well. And when there's a lot of different factors to that, and I would encourage you to get counseling to help you sort through what that may look like.
Even for the guy who's doing this, you mentioned Celebrate Recovery. She could even go to Celebrate Recovery.
Yeah.
Because go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, man.
No, you're good.
But there is also a lot of support groups for spouses out there. Yeah. I know that the original founding of Alcoholics Anonymous, the wives actually got together and formed their own groups and call it Al-Anon. And they were able to support each other. And there's actually in Nashville, Tennessee, at Bethesda Workshops, there's support groups and workshops for the spouses of the addicted.
Yeah, that would be my encouragement to you as the wife. Seek out a support group. If you're not plugged into a church, find one, because I think we've been going back to this idea of God's design for us, being in community with other people, and you can find help in that, and I'm with you on that, Lane. My heart breaks for this couple who's going through this, because this is not God's idea of a healthy marriage.
No.
Yeah. So yeah, and I would also seek out, and if you don't have a church or someone, MyCounselor.Online, there's counselors here who specialize in this very thing. And I definitely encourage you to go seek out help with them.
Yeah. Another resource besides counseling, if you're still working up the courage, because a lot of courage to be able to come into, whether it's a room to my office physically or whether it's just to log on to the Zoom chat, if you're still working to that, and that's okay, I'd encourage you to reach out to your church family, but then also pick up the book called The Journey by Melissa Haas. And so she's a lady out of Atlanta, Georgia, and her husband cheated on her as well. They're still married, but she was able to write a wonderful workbook to help process the pain that comes with this. And I've recommended it to numerous women, and they all unanimously really appreciate the things that she has to say.
Yeah, tell us the name of that book one more time.
The Journey by Melissa Haas, Haas.
Okay, that's good. All right, so let me get to our next question. And this is a good question too here. It says, how am I supposed to make the transition from a lifetime of abstinence to marriage if the church has taught me to be afraid of sex my entire life?
Yeah, this is another question that breaks my heart too. One that's way too common. I think, especially as I've entered into marriage and have just dialogued with a lot of my other friends that are recently married, this is something that's really normal and common, because the church will often just tell us this sex is bad, don't do it until you're married, but then doesn't go deep on the theology of sex and what it is and why it's so beautiful and why we save it for marriage. Ultimately, we need to be able to reshape our theology of sex and why God has designed it, which is to ultimately, my belief is that it's a reflection of the intimacy that he has with us. It's a form of intimacy, the oneness there. And that's what is so big and so beautiful. And that's why we save it, especially for just one person. And so ways to kind of transition and to into that is to, one, know that it takes time. It takes practice. The sexual relationship and sexual intimacy is just like any other part of your relationship, like communication or doing chores properly. It takes time to know how we are and what the other person's like too. And so it takes time to build that. And then two, to know that, again, this is normal, and that you really work on and push into your theology of sex, right? develop your own theology of sex. This is really common for a lot of people that are first getting married, especially young. We're doing this in a lot of other parts of our lives too, really understanding what we believe and what the church taught us, and really developing our own theological foundations with the help of those around us. So bring in those that we care about, and that we truly trust, and ask them these questions. Okay, what does this look like? Dialogue about it with your spouse. Be open and honest, saying, hey, this is still really scary for me. I encourage those that I do sex therapy with is to not play through pain, whether that's physical or emotional pain. Just like when we're on a sports team, we don't want to play through injuries because it's only going to make it worse. We need to be able to tell those that are on the sidelines or those that we're with, saying, hey, this really hurts and this is why. And that allows them to come in and give you the care that that you need. Lastly, is the best resource that I have found for this is The Celebration of Sex by Dr. Douglas Rosenau. He's a pioneer. He's a seminary graduate and a pioneer in the sex therapy realm, Christian sex therapy, and does a beautiful job of showing how God has designed sex, how God wants us to be able to enjoy it, and then also gives really good practical steps on how to enjoy it in ways that we can.
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard answering these questions because anytime I'm asking these questions, like I get more questions in my head, like what is the church teaching?
Yeah.
Like that's not God's design for you to be afraid.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. And I think it goes back to when I look upon my own life and then just also the lives of the clients that I've worked with, is there was a lot of fear around the topic that we're going to tell our little kids all of this, and they're going to go out and do it. However, as I look about being a father soon, I want my kids to be able to know what it is and be able to really understand like the discipline that comes with it, because this is a gift that God gives us to steward.
Right.
It's beautiful. And there's a lot of responsibility with it. And I think some church can be really scared that they're going to upset people, and say, nope, just don't do it. And then you'll figure out when you're older. However, that causes us to seek. We still are curious by nature, especially when we're growing up, to figure things out. And that leads us to poor sources, whether that's our friends on the bus, our friends at school, or the internet, which is the worst place to learn about what sex is. So we need to be able to create that safety. Again, the theme, the unexpected theme of this episode is safety in relationships. And being able to create that safety of knowing we can talk about anything. I'm not going to shame you. And we have this space where you can learn and grow. And whether that's at home or at the church. Yeah,
that's good. Yeah, I think the church has had a tendency to be afraid and we're never going to talk about this again.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been good. Tell me the name of that book one more time. You were talking about the theology of sex.
So it's called The Celebration of Sex by Dr. Douglas Rosenau.
Okay. All right. That's good. Well, this has been very good, Lane. It's been a pleasure talking to you today, getting to know you a little bit more. I want to thank everyone who's been watching or listening. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And Lane, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. Your insight is very much appreciated. Thank you again, Lane. Is there any final thoughts you got for us before we close out?
No, I think it was a pleasure to be here. It was great to get to know you a little bit more. And I look forward to the next time that we get to be together.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you so much, Lane. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions that you would like to submit, that you want to be answered, that could be answered on future episodes, you can visit us at MyCounselor.Online/ask. Also, I want to take this opportunity to make sure that you stay up to date with all the latest helpful and encouraging content by subscribing to our channel here and follow us on all of our social media platforms. We are on Facebook at Love My Counselor. We are on Instagram at Love My Counselor. And finally, we're on YouTube at MyCounselor.Online Christian Counseling. Again, that's MyCounselor.Online Christian Counseling. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And again, thank you, Lane, for everything that you've shared with us today and the article that you wrote.
Awesome. Thank you, Matthew.
All right. Thank you, guys. You guys have a great day.